Well, voters in Durham are heading to the polls today to elect a new member of parliament for a seat left vacant by former Conservative leader Erin O'Toole. Let's bring in CTV political commentator Scott Reid for the latest on this race. Scott, it's great to see you as always. This has been a Conservative stronghold for about 2 decades. The Pierre Poilievre Conservatives, of course, watching this very closely. What do the polls suggest?
Well, the polls suggest that the Conservatives should win a pretty straightforward victory. I mean, if this goes to Hoyle, there should be really no contest. It is the riding of the former Conservative leader, Erin O'Toole, as you mentioned. They've held it for a couple of decades. And, you know, nationally, you take a look at where the government is polling in relation to the Conservative Party, they are far behind. So that is what you should expect. But there's always an asterisk when it comes to by-elections, Lena, and that is turnout. You just never know. Funny surprises can happen. So just keep your eye on it. You can never take it for granted.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just never know what could happen. Introduce us to the candidates if you can, Scott. Jamil Javani, a Conservative commentator. The Liberals are putting up Robert Rock. He's a local councillor in Scugog. What about everybody else?
Everybody else, you've got a Green candidate running, you've got a PPC and an NDP. Now, I don't think they're going to figure very prominently. It's a measure of Pierre Poilievre's sort of strategic approach to the Conservative coalition he's building, that the PPC, the far-right PPC, aren't much of a threat. And I don't think that the NDP and the Greens, from what I've heard, are terribly active. So, you know, look to see if the Liberals can make any inroads. It's interesting, their choice of candidate, he's a local councillor and a fellow who really is sort of seen as more of a traditional progressive Conservative. And I think the hope is having him run for the Liberals, maybe he can poach some of those Erin O'Toole-esque, more progressive Conservative voters. I think that's kind of their hope. But I wouldn't place all my marbles in that basket if I were them.
Yeah, and it was interesting to hear him say that his values don't align with the federal Conservatives. Now, this is a critical riding in the GTA, Scott, as you know. What would tonight's results signal to all the major federal parties ahead of a looming election?
You're looking for confirmation. If you're all the federal parties are looking to see, does this confirm what we think about where the trends are going? And you always have to be hesitant not to read too much into by-elections because they can be unique. People sometimes use them to send a message. You can get strange results based on very low turnout. But the parties are looking for confirmation. The Conservatives want to know, yep, we're riding high in the polls. We can win seats. We can certainly re-elect ourselves into seats that we held already here in Ontario. The Liberals are wondering, you know, is there any chance? Can we get off the mat? We've been behind now for 7, 8 months. Is there any chance that we score a surprise victory here? So they'll be looking to see if they can buck the trend. And I think the NDP, frankly, are just hoping to hold their own. This doesn't appear to be a riding where they've placed a lot of hopes, which is interesting because, you know, Durham is a stone's throw from Oshawa, which was for many, many years an NDP stronghold and, of course, was home to former leader Ed Broadbent.
As you said, turnout, that could be a tricky thing when it comes to by-elections. Has there been a great level of interest surrounding this one? What are you sensing in terms of the interest and the turnout?
Well, to be candid, probably with you and me and national media, interest is pretty mild. This is a Conservative-held riding. You would expect it to be Conservative captured again. So there's not a ton of stakes here. People aren't paying close attention. But I do know the Conservatives have really swamped this riding. You know, they brought in a couple of their chief key national organizers. They don't want to take anything for granted. They think Jamil Javani is a real catch as a candidate. I think it's going to be interesting to see if he is elected and then re-elected in a future general election, exactly how he sits in the caucus, because he can be a bit of an unpredictable factor. But that's their hope. I think, frankly, I would expect very low turnout. I don't think this race is engaging a ton of people. And what I hear even from Conservatives is they recognize that this whole thing is going to turn on their ability to get a small number of people to the polls because a large number aren't coming out under their own steam.
All right. CTV's political commentator, Scott Reid, thanks so much for your input.
Thanks, Lena.